Hello, my name is Martin Banda Jr., and this is my final presentation for Asian American Women 308 for summer 2024. I did my final research paper on the resettlement of Cambodian women in the United States. I had an initial interest in learning about the struggles Cambodian women went through because one of my best friends growing up is Cambodian. I thought learning about her ethnic history would be an interesting topic of discussion and deepen our friendship if I knew what her people had gone through. Also reading the article in the book called Scarred Yet Undefeated, Hmong and Cambodian Women and Girls in the United States for this class made me aware of some of the unimaginable brutality that Cambodian women faced. Their husbands and kids were executed right in front of them, and they were not allowed to show any remorse or react in any way, lest they be executed as well. What further baffled me was the person in command of the Khmer Rouge that was doing this to them was Cambodian. For some background on why Cambodian women resettled in the United States was they were refugees from their own country because of a man named Pol Pot, the leader of the Khmer Rouge. Pol Pot won a civil war in Cambodia and then proceeded to turn his country into a giant forced labor camp. Around 2 million people died from executions, hunger, disease, injuries, coerced labor, and exposure to the elements. Approximately 158,000 Cambodians entered the U.S. between 1975 and 1994. They were placed all over the United States by the U.S. Office of Refugee Settlement. As Cambodian women got situated in their sponsored location, they found themselves in poverty with unsafe living conditions, low-paying jobs, sometimes in an informal job market, and marginalized not only for their ethnicity, but for their gender as well. Cambodian women did not adapt as well as other groups as they attempted to hold on to their culture and way of life. Because they had trouble adapting, they often faced discrimination. Discrimination predicts poor health among immigrants generally and increases risk for depression, PTSD, and anxiety for refugees and forced migrants. Refugee women have elevated risks for poor health due to higher rates of depression, lower literacy, English language skills, and education, lower acculturation, higher prevalence of being widowed, lower social support, and lower reported physical activity than refugee men. Cambodian women refugees had high numbers of anxiety as resettlement placed increased adaptive and social demands on them. In a U.S. study sample collecting data over a span of a year, outcomes included children reported measures of depressive symptoms, antisocial behavior, delinquent behavior, and school problems. The analysis showed a correlation between maternal trauma and the children's mental health. The diminished health of women is often overlooked. Their traumatic stress spills over into the lives of their children. For Cambodian women refugees, there is unmistakable evidence of intergenerational transmission of trauma. The intergenerational transmission of trauma refers to the ways in which trauma experienced in one generation influence the development and well-being of offspring in subsequent generations. There is a continued population that deals with long-ago experiences. If we can recognize these health implications, we can determine proper assistance and support as refugees settle in communities. We can set resources for them and their families, helping to address the parental trauma. Despite the fortitude and resilience refugee families inherently exhibit after surviving war of political violence, they remain a population vulnerable to adverse psychological and social conditions. It's well documented in studies and stories that resettlement trauma still exists today among Cambodian refugees. While they have managed to move on in their lives as wives and mothers, there is an underlying trauma, and that has become intergenerational. The intergenerational trauma can be linked to child mental health, depression, anxiety, and delinquent behavior. With the maternal traumatic distress data shows poor communication, conflict, lack of warmth, and detachment. While there are resources made available at the time of resettlement, it goes without question that resources today would have been incredible value in helping refugees cope and in some cases heal. The greatest conclusion that can be made from all the text is that Cambodian women are quite resilient. I cited the following quote from the anthology textbook. Although beaten down by war and misguided revolution, flight, confinement, in-person like refugee camps, and the challenges of adapting to a completely different environment as they move from peasant societies to the world's most technologically advanced country, these women are survivors in every sense of the word. They have survived because they are strong, courageous, tenacious, and adaptable. Their stories show how some women may be scarred, yet remain undefeated.